Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. I'm Snow, and today I'll be continuing my build series with Pamina. She's a strong counterattacking character with one of the most amazing designs in the game. She looks like an absolute boss. So in this video, I'll be going over her skill build as well as her potential skill and equipment setups. First, we have her trait skill. It's called Unyielding Heroine, and this has two parts to it. The first part increases her defense by 15% for each enemy within 2 tiles of Pamina, and this goes up to a 30% defense boost. This defensive boost helps her with her overall tankiness and works well with the second part of her trait skill and her overall skill kit. So for the second part of her trait skill, this gives her the ability to ignore block. In other words, enemies can't block her attacks. She also gets an increase to her physical defense by 30%, but that's at 5 stars. At base level, she gets a 10% physical defense boost. And for each star level, she gets an additional 5% increase to her physical defense. So at 1 star, it's 10%, at 2 stars, it's 15%, at 3 stars, it's 20%, and so on. Additionally, 30% of her physical defense will be added to her physical attack. At base star level, this starts off at 20% and increases to 30% at 4 stars. So all of the defensive boosts that she's getting through her trait skill, and from her equipment, her skill tree, and anywhere else for that matter, will increase her physical attack and her overall damage. The next part of her trait skill is her unique skill mechanic. So after entering battle, she gains Unyielding Heroine, and this is basically a counter-attacking technique. So when Pamina's attacked by an enemy within 2 tiles of her, she'll deal 90% physical AoE damage to all enemies within range, and she'll generate 45% lifesteal. But for each additional target hit, the damage dealt will be reduced by 10%, and it can be reduced up to 30%. This effect cannot be dispelled or immunized. This is a great counter-attacking technique that allows you to deal damage outside of your turn, and it has built-in sustain because of the lifesteal. However, Unyielding Heroine does have limitations for the number of times it can be activated per turn, and star level plays a big role in the number of times she can proc this skill. So at base star level, it activates 1 time per turn. At 2 stars, it activates 2 times. At 3 stars, it activates 3 times. And it reaches the maximum of 4 times per turn at 5 stars. Basically, the higher her star level, the more times this Unyielding Heroine's going to proc. So her counterattack will activate more times, which means she'll be dealing more damage per turn. And for the last part of her trait skill, she only gets this at 5 stars. When her counterattack is triggered, Pamina dispels 1 debuff and recovers 1 energy. This part of her trait skill allows her to turn cycle her skills really well. You'll see what I mean when we get into her skill tree, as well as her skill build. So she also starts with a skill called Swift Combo, also called Rapid Combo. This is a single target attack that causes 20% damage. It dispels 2 buffs from the target and then performs Pursuit, dealing an additional 130% damage. This isn't a bad skill, but it's quickly replaced by what's in her skill tree. So at level 1, we have a choice skill and a support skill. Let's start with the support skill. It's called Who Dares to Contend, also called Who Can Compete. With this skill, Pamina inflicts Taunt on the target. This is a control debuff that increases speed by 100 points, and the target can't be controlled, so it can only use basic attacks. Pamina will also recover 30% of her HP, and she gains a few buffs. The first one is Parry, and this allows her to turn and face an attacker, and it adds 20% of her physical attack to her physical defense. She'll also get damage reduction too, which decreases the damage taken by 20%, and these buffs will last for 2 turns. She also grants increased defense 2 to all other allies within 4 tiles of the character for 2 turns. An increased defense 2 gives a 40% increase to both physical and magic defense, and this buff will last for 2 turns. In cases where the target is immune to taunt, this skill will inflict Pamina's Challenge. This is a debuff that when attacked by Pamina, the damage taken is additionally increased by 30%, so the enemy will take an additional 30% damage. And this debuff will last for 2 turns. This is actually a really great skill, especially to use in certain situations. This does have a 3-turn cooldown, so you can't use this repeatedly. And her other skill at level 1 is really important. This is a decision skill called Breakthrough Spear, and this allows you to choose between 2 skills. The first option is called Break Endless Force, and that's the skill I'm showing on the left. So this skill deals 50% AoE damage 3 times to all enemies within 1 tile of the target, and Pamina gains Shield Break 4 before attacking. If the target is dying, she'll ignore 80% of their defense and inflicts Block Resolve before attacking. And the other skill choice is called Break Invincible. This is the skill being shown on the right, and this skill deals 110% AoE damage to all enemies within a 1x5 area in the target direction. It also knocks back the first enemy by 2 tiles. Now these skills do have a cost to use. They both have an energy cost of 2, and they don't have a cooldown. So as long as you have energy, you can use these skills. So that part of her trait skill where she gets the energy regeneration really helps out with using this skill repeatedly every turn. Using her with a character like Terror, who provides energy regeneration with his skills, would also allow Pamina to use one of these 2 skills every turn. Breakthrough Spear is one of Pamina's core skills. So for rank 1, it's recommended to pick up Breakthrough Spear. At rank 3, we have 2 passive skills. First we have Chop, and with this passive, after initiating an active attack, she deals 20% physical damage to all enemies within a 1-tile radius of the character. This isn't a bad skill, but her other skill at rank 3 just has more value. So her other option at rank 3 is called Sturdy Stance, also called Indomitable Stance. This is a passive that decreases damage taken by 15%. And when performing an AoE attack, 15% of Pamina's magic defense and physical defense is added to her attack, so her physical attack. This skill is great because you're getting a combination of the damage reduction as well as the increase to her damage. And as a counter-attacking character, it's beneficial to have as much damage mitigation as possible. And the attack increase she's getting with this skill works both offensively and defensively, so it's applied for all AoE skills, including her counterattacks. So this is a well-rounded skill that works amazingly well with her trait skill and the skills in her skill kit. So it's recommended to pick up Indomitable Stance at rank 3. At rank 5, we have the reaction skills. The first option is called Front Defense. With this skill, when Pamina is hit by an active attack from the front, the damage taken is decreased by 30%. This is a really straightforward skill. You're getting a damage reduction, but only if you're hit from the front. The other skill at rank 5 is called Righteousness, also called Upright Spirit. With this reaction skill, it increases the healing received by 15%. And at the start of the turn, she'll dispel 3 debuffs. And if the character has no debuffs, she'll recover 20% HP. This is a really great reaction skill for Pamina because it helps her with her sustainability. The cleanse is removing 3 debuffs off of Pamina, which allows her to prevent herself from being controlled by the enemy, so she won't be prevented from doing her counterattacks. The healing part of this skill is also really good because you're recovering 20% of her HP, and this alongside the lifesteal that you get from her counterattacks helps with keeping her HP topped off. The healing received portion of this reaction skill also increases the healing received from her lifesteal. This skill does have a 1-turn cooldown, so it can activate every other turn, but this reaction skill offers a lot for Pamina, both for her self-sustain as well as preventing her from being controlled, which is really important for a counter-attacking character. So it's recommended to pick up Upright Spirit at rank 5. At rank 7, we have 2 damage skills. First, we have Shield Break. This is a physical attack that deals 60% AoE damage to the first enemy in each column within a 3x2 area in the target direction. It also inflicts physical defense down 2, which decreases the enemy's physical defense by 40%, and this debuff lasts for 2 turns. It also knocks back the enemies by 2 tiles. Again, this is not a bad skill, but her other skill at rank 7 is her ultimate skill, and that's called Breakthrough Invincible, also called Onslaught. This is a physical attack where Pamina jumps to the target location and deals 70% AoE damage to all enemies within 2 tiles of the target. She'll also inflict Taunt on the enemy, which increases speed by 100 points, and the enemy can't be controlled and can only use basic attacks. She also inflicts Vulnerable to on the enemy, which increases damage taken by 20%, and these debuffs will last for 1 turn. After attacking, Pamina gains Onslaught, which is a buff that reduces damage and piercing damage taken by 30%. She also gains Resolve and can block 1 fatal damage. This effect can't be dispelled, and the Onslaught buff will last for 2 turns. In addition, if the enemy target is immune to Taunt, she'll inflict Pamina's Challenge, which is a debuff that when the enemy is attacked by Pamina, the damage taken is additionally increased by 30%, and this debuff will last for 2 turns. This is one of Pamina's core skills. It just offers so much, it's literally a mainstay in one of her skill slots, regardless of what skill build that you do. This skill just has so much value, and it is her ultimate skill, so it's recommended to pick up Onslaught at rank 7. At rank 9 are the basic attacks. First we have Surefire Attack, also called Breaking Lightning. This is an attack that deals 100% physical damage and inflicts dodge block on the enemy target, and the debuff lasts for 1 turn. The other option is called Powerful Attack, and this deals 110% physical damage. This is a really straightforward skill. You can choose either of these basic attack skills. It doesn't really matter all that much. I will say that Surefire Attack does give you a 3% defense boost when you select it, and because of her trait skill, it will boost her damage a little bit. If you choose Powerful Attack, it gives you an HP boost, which will make her a little bit tankier. She also has a skill at rank 11 that bases the damage off of her basic attack skill's damage. So Powerful Attack would be a better option with respect to that. For the most part, she won't be using her basic attack, so pick whichever one that you want. And at rank 11, we have a support skill and a passive. First we have Frontline Action, also called Firewire. This is a passive where Pamina's speed is increased by 50 points. And when in a healthy state, so when her HP is no less than 70%, damage taken is decreased by 20%. This skill has some applications for PvP, but the other option is one of Pamina's core skills. It's called Counterattack, and this is a support skill that allows Pamina to gain 2 buffs. The first is Counterattack, and with this buff, when Pamina takes an active attack from an enemy from the front or side, within her attack range, she'll perform a strike back that deals 70% of basic attack damage. This effect triggers only once per round. The other buff you get is called Counterattack Slash, and with this buff, when using a strike back or triggering her trait skill, the damage is increased by 85% and can generate 50% lifesteal. Additionally, when using Strike Back, the maximum range is increased by 8 tiles, and the minimum range is increased by 2 tiles. And the Strike Back count is increased by an additional 2 times per round. And the Counterattack and Counterattack Slash buffs last for 2 turns. This skill allows her to increase the damage from her counterattacks and for when her trait skill is triggered, so for when her Unyielding Heroine mechanic is triggered. This is one of her signature skills. So for those reasons, it's recommended to pick up Counterattack at rank 11. So for her skill setup, you're going to have her basic attack, whichever one that you picked. For her reaction skill, you'll have Upright Spirit, and for her skill slots, there's a couple of different setups that you can use. So for the first setup, you have your decision skill. That's the one that allows you to choose between those 2 different skills. Her ultimate skill and the counterattack skill. This is a really good setup for damage and making use of her counterattacking ability. The second option is to swap out the counterattack skill for the passive Indomitable Stance. This is going to give her a little more tankiness, but will still give her the increases to her AoE attacks. Both of these setups work really well for Pamina and synergize well with her trait skill. In terms of her equipment setup, for her weapon, she has a couple of options. The first option is called Army Breaking Spear. This is her signature weapon, so it's made for her. This weapon gives both a crit rate and attack boost. It also has a skill that before attacking, if the total distance of movement, charge, and teleportation is no less than 6, using a non-instant skill to attack resets the skill's cooldown and refunds the consumed energy. This effect does have a 7-turn cooldown. Basically, what this skill is talking about, you move with Pamina. Her ultimate skill is a jump skill that gives additional movement, so you can easily get to the 6 movement. Her ultimate skill is also a non-instant skill, so when you're using this spear, you attack with her ultimate skill. It's going to reset her ultimate skill's cooldown and refund the energy consumed, so you get the 3 energy back, which means you'll be able to use her ultimate skill again on the next turn. So this is a really nice weapon for her. This weapon skill does have a 7-turn cooldown, which I think is fair because it is resetting the cooldown and refunding your energy. The cooldown also gets reduced by starring up the weapon. So when this weapon is 5 stars, the cooldown is only 3 turns. This is really a premium weapon and a high investment weapon. She does have some good free-to-play options for weapons as well. The first option is double-sided halberd, and this increases her physical attack and increases her damage for each target hit when she attacks. At max star level, you can get up to a 24% damage increase, and since all of her attacks are basically AoE, this weapon works really well for her. Silent Guard is also another good option. With this weapon, when she's actively attacked, she'll get an increase to her defense, and her next attack deals more damage. And this can go all the way up to a 30% defense increase and a 25% damage boost when the weapon's at 5 stars. So besides her signature weapon, she does have some nice free-to-play options available for her to use. For her trinket, she has a couple of options. Her best option is probably Evergreen Pendant. I know what you're thinking, it's a gold one, but this thing is stupidly good on her. So with Evergreen Pendant, when healed, there is a 50% chance, which actually goes up to a 100% chance when this is max star level, to gain one random level 2 buff. This includes buffs like increased attack, crit rate, physical defense, magic defense, and healing. So all of these buffs are extremely beneficial for Pamina, and the buffs last for 2 turns. What makes this kind of broken on Pamina is that it doesn't just proc when another character heals her. It activates when her reaction skill heals her, as well as from the lifesteal from her counterattacks. I tested it, and even with the 50% chance, I was getting buffs from both the reaction skill and her counterattacks. So this is a fantastic option for her. You can also use something like Shield of Justice, which gives you a nice combination of damage and damage mitigation. You can also use trinkets that prevent her from being controlled. So something like Fancy Hat will give her immunity to disrupt. Or you can use something like Cooling Powder, which will give her immunity to healing block. That way you can always benefit from her healing from her reaction skill and from her lifesteal. So there's a lot of different options you can go with for her trinket. And maybe depending on the situation, you may want to change up what trinket you're using. And for her Tarot Whisper, her best option is Magician because all of her skills are AoE, so she'll benefit from the damage increase for every additional enemy hit. You can also use something like Devil, especially if it's a stage where there's a lot of enemies. You can also use something like the Tower Tarot Whisper, but this is only going to increase the damage to her counterattacks. So you're better off using the Magician Tarot Whisper, since that will power up all of her attacks. Pamina is a strong, bruiser DPS style character who specializes in counterattacking due to her unique skill mechanic Unyielding Heroine and the unique ability to ignore block. She excels at controlling the battlefield with AoE attacks, counter-strikes, and her special abilities like Taunt and Pamina's Challenge. She has excellent self-sustain because of her ability to self-heal, cleanse, lifesteal, and apply buffs like Onslaught, which provides her with damage reduction and the ability to block 1 fatal damage. I want to know a lot of Pamina's power is locked behind star level, so you'll start seeing her full potential at least 3 stars. That way her Unyielding Heroine Counter-Strike can trigger at least 3 times per round, so just keep that in mind. Pamina is a fantastic bruiser-style DPS who has the ability to passively deal a lot of damage per round with her counter-strikes, while tanking damage due to her high defense and self-healing capabilities. So she's definitely worth building if you get her. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Bye.